fishy internet peoples. Tonight I'm going to show you how I do my microworm cultures. It is definitely not, as disclaimer, it's definitely not the only way, and it might not be the best way. But this is how I do it after having the same culture for a couple years and experimenting with different ingredients. And this is what I came up with that works the best for me, and I'll explain my reasoning as we go along. So first, of course, you're going to need some kind of a starter culture. This is an old one that is definitely ready to start anew. And I'll show you why it needs to be started again here in a minute. But you're going to need one. Either you can order one online or get a start from a friend or whatever. And then you're going to need a container. This is a pretty good one here. I'll put holes in the lid. I'll show you how I do that. But you want something that's like over an inch deep, because you're going to put the culture starter in the bottom and the worms are going to climb up the sides. And if you have too shallow of a container, it's going to be a mess and they're going to be all over the lid and stuff. So it's better to have a semi-deep container. This one's probably about 3 inches deep. Okay, and then what I use is old-fashioned oatmeal, mashed potatoes with no flavoring or anything added to it, and some dry yeast, active dry yeast, which some people don't use it. I do. I find for me it works better to have the yeast. And then we've got our scissors and our coffee filter and some tape. And what we're going to use the coffee filter for is we're going to put some holes in the lid of the container so the worms can get some air. But we're going to cover it up with a piece of coffee filter so that other nasty bugs can't get in. So that's what we have that for. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm not going to show this part. I'm going to start by cooking the oatmeal and cooking the mashed potatoes. And the reason that I use a combination of both the oatmeal and the mashed potatoes is I started out just using oatmeal. It's a little bit thicker to start out with, and it lasts longer, but it also smells worse than the mashed potatoes. However, I tried just mashed potatoes, and to me they break down too fast and get runny too fast. So I mix it about half and half. The oatmeal kind of keeps the mashed potatoes a little bit thicker. And I don't know, the combination just works good for me. And the reason that I use yeast, some people don't use yeast. I do. From what I've read, the microworms don't actually eat the starch. You can use any kind of starch you want. I mean, you could use baby cereal, or I've heard of people using dry cereal to start it. It's just totally up to you, but this combination of the two is what I ended up with. But anyway, the microworms don't actually eat the starch. What they eat is the little microorganisms and yeast that eat the starch. So to me, using the yeast just makes it go real fast. So okay, I'm going to cook some stuff and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have about half oatmeal and half potatoes. I'm going to stir them up together, which I'm probably not going to be able to do one-handed. So I'll let it cool off for a minute and then do some more. But anyway, you don't want to do the culture really hot, so you got to let it cool off. But if you bake at all, you realize that yeast is alive, and it starts growing faster with slightly warm water, or warm moisture, around 90 degrees, somewhere in there, but which is warm to the touch, but not hot. And you also don't want it hot because you don't want to kill your microworms either, but you definitely don't want to kill the yeast. And from everything that I've read, the microworms don't actually eat the starch that you're using, which in this case is mashed potatoes and oatmeal. but they eat the yeast and other microorganisms that eat the starch. So that's kind of why I use the yeast, and I don't know, to me it seems to work very well. A little bit better than not having the yeast, so that's what I do. But you can also use other kinds of starch. I've seen people use like Rice Krispies, which I'll use to mix into, like, extend the life of a culture a little bit longer. But you can use baby cereal, you can use anything you want. Just has to be starchy and something that the microorganisms and yeast can feed on, and then the microworms feed on them. So I'm going to put some holes in the lid of this container while the mashed potatoes and oatmeal cool off. And I'll be right back with you. So I got the holes in the lid drilled. I just use a cordless drill. Put 4 holes in there, and I managed to crack the plastic a little bit, but it's not really going to hurt anything. Just need some air holes, and I'm going to tape the coffee filter over the top and into place so that no buggies can get in and get mixed with my microworms. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so I got the coffee filter taped on top of the lid. Got the tape on the edges so that the holes are not underneath the tape. Like I say, you want them to be able to breathe. So that's just simple. The oatmeal mashed potato mix is stirred up and cooled off to where it's just warm. And it's kind of like the consistency of mashed potatoes, kind of a little bit thick. Not too thick though, and not super runny, because you don't want to start out with runny. So that's about the consistency that they are. I'm going to go ahead and put some of them in the tub. Okay, we have our mashed potatoes in the tub. There's probably about ½ an inch, maybe an inch in places, and that looks good. That's about what we want. Leaves plenty of room for the worms to go up the side and for us to harvest them without them being all over the lid and stuff. Which you can still harvest them off the lid, but it's a lot less messy to have enough depth to where you don't have to. And then we'll do that. A little fit on tight, so we're going to go ahead and add some microworms to that. But I'm going to show you, if I can get it on camera, what the microworms look like and when you know that it's time to do another culture. This one is probably about a month old. Let's see if we can get it in the light. Yeah, you can see how the top surface of it is moving. That is the microworms. Okay? And if you look, you can see they're up on the sides of the container. That's a little bit harder to see, but maybe you can see it along the sides. They're along the sides, and that's the part that you harvest. You can just take your finger or a paintbrush or Q-tip or whatever you want. I just use my finger and just kind of go run it along the sides, and then I dip it into the fish tank, and the fish get the worms. But I wanted to show you what, this is a very alive culture. You see how it's like moving? Now the reason that it needs to be redone is because the surface is getting a little bit hard. I mean, it's kind of runny underneath, but the surface is hard, and that's their waste and stuff. And if you just leave it, it's going to start getting moldy, and it's going to get hard, and they like make a hard crust over the top, and the microworms will die. The microworms do not burrow down into the starch like, say, an earthworm burrows down. Microworms do not do that. They stay on the surface. So we're going to scrape some off the surface and drop into this. But first we're going to go ahead and sprinkle the yeast over the top. So I usually just, hang on here. Cat's opened up the cupboard door. I love my cats. I usually just put a little bit in the lid and then just kind of sprinkle a little bit over the top to start it. And with the warmth that's still in the potatoes, the yeast will grow and start colonizing into the starch, and the microworms will eat the yeast and other organisms. So we are going to just take, and if you're starting out with a new culture, just go ahead and kind of spread the culture over the top. You see how this is kind of, it's creamy and dark colored. It needs to be refreshed because this is all mostly microworm doo-doo, and it's like I said, it's starting to get a little bit crusty. So we'll just put like 1 scoop on top there, and they will like spread out and start colonizing it themselves. And if you can, don't do what I just did, which was get some on the side, because that makes it harder to harvest without getting any in the tank. However, if you do get a little bit in the tank, if you get a little bit of mashed potatoes and oatmeal in the tank, it isn't going to hurt anything. You just don't want to get so much that it fouls the water, but like cory cats and a lot of fish will eat even the oatmeal, so it's really not anything to super stress about. And like I say, this is what our start looks like, and we'll just leave it for a few days, and then it should have microworms crawling up the sides. We put the lid on it, so you always keep a lid on them, because if you don't, the moisture in there will evaporate and the culture will dry, and you will have a dead culture. And it is always a good idea to either keep keep more than 1 culture going. I usually have about 4 tubs going, 4 to 6 tubs going at the same time. And you can also take part of your culture and put it in a little tub in your refrigerator, because they will survive down to 32 degrees, and they'll just kind of go dormant, and you can keep them in your refrigerator for months, and then go ahead and switch out with another start. But that way, if for some reason you aren't paying enough attention or whatever and your culture crashes, you have another start in the fridge, so no worries. So I'm going to go ahead and get a culture that I started about 3 or 4 days ago and show you what that looks like. So hold on. So this is a culture that I started Tuesday, and today is Sunday. So it's getting close to a week, and it's getting to where I can harvest from it now. You see the culture on the bottom, and the microworms are what's crawling up the sides. And all you do to harvest it is either I just use my finger, but you can take a paintbrush or a Q-tip, and you get those microworms on it, and then just swish it around in the tank. Now, if you get a little bit of the culture on your finger, like some oatmeal or something, it's like no worries. It's not going to matter unless you get like way too much in there. But yeah, this one is getting close to a week old, and definitely ready to start harvesting out of. So this is the culture that I just took the start from. And I have a couple choices with what to do with the rest of it. It's pretty thin, so I could add some more stuff to it. And what I usually do when I'm going to do that is I'll take Rice Krispies and I'll crunch them up into kind of a rough powder and stir it in to kind of thicken up the culture again, and sprinkle yeast over the top. Or I could go ahead and start some more cultures with it. But I just started some a few days ago, so I really don't need to do that. So I'll probably just stir some cereal and sprinkle some yeast over the top of this one. Now when you got your culture going, after about a week or so, about once a week, you want to stir it up and sprinkle just a little bit of yeast over the top, just like a pinch of yeast over the top. And the reason you want to do that is because the microworms do not burrow down into the culture. They stay on the surface. So you want to stir it up so that you're stirring the nutrients and stuff back up for the microworms to feed on. So I'm thinking that, okay, so this culture is rejuvenated probably for a couple more weeks. I just took a little bit of the potato mixture and some Rice Krispies and stirred in, and then I sprinkled over the top with yeast. and it will come back real quick. And it's thick again, and there's plenty for them to eat. So it should be good to go for a week or so. Now when you feed them, like I say, just take something to get the culture off the sides. All those are the microworms there. I just use my finger, but you can use like a paintbrush or a Q-tip or whatever. And then just stick it down in the tank. I feed microworms to fry. Like the Daisy's rice fish, I'll start out with vinegar eels, and then I'll switch to microworms and like a powdered food. And I'll alternate, because you don't want to feed nothing but microworms because they're real fatty and real rich, but they're really good for the fry. So I'll like feed like microworms in the morning, and then some crushed flake food in the afternoon or evening, or fry food. And they're also good for like nanofish, which I have a lot of. I feed microworms to my inler tank, and I feed to my Daisy's rice fish. Even the adult ones will eat it. My bettas are a little bit too big. The adult bettas are too big, but you can feed it to fry as long as you don't overdo it and mix in other foods too. And I've got drape fin barb fry, which will eat it. The adults usually won't, because it's a little bit small for them. And, you know, ember tetras, you know, small fish, nanofish will eat it. Start getting a little bit of size on them, and you need a little bit bigger food. But anyway, so that's it, and thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, just put them down in the comments, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Thanks a lot. Y'all have a good day. Main ingredient, cat hair. Mario, are you gonna move? What are you doing? Huh? I'm trying to make a video here. What are you doing? You're drinking out of the fish tank, aren't you? Huh?